What a fucking week, man. What a crazy fucking week. I mean, that's exactly what we wanted week 14 to be. Maybe not the result for some people, but it came down to the Monday night game for like most of the matchups, or at least for people's playoff seeds. That was insane. Uh, this will be a little bit less structured than normal. I'm going to talk a little bit about like the matchups, but also the teams, but also the upcoming matchups. So just bear with me. Anyway, let's start off kind of with some of the previous matchups. And we'll start with the top scorer of the week. Jason did all he could to earn his playoff spot, scoring over 140 against Sam. But with wins from both Tim and me, he got cockblocked and left out in the cold. No playoffs for him. It is strange to see the third best scoring team not in the playoffs, but that's frankly the terrible beauty of fantasy football. Better luck next year, Jason. Sam, of course, then lost while scoring 137, but frankly, this week didn't matter for him at all, as he completely secured the 2 seed the previous week. This week was purely just to score some points and enjoy watching Saquon break free for a 50-yard touchdown, which had to provide at least some level of comfort going into the postseason. Speaking of Tim Pryor, by the way, if you can see a dog kind of jumping up and down, that is Walt's dog. Walt just moved in, and so his dog Kelso is kind of beep-bopping around. So if you see a little black and white dog moving around, that's who the fuck that is. Anyway, I mentioned Tim before, so we'll talk about him now. David Montgomery had a good game on Thursday night, but CeeDee Lamb got knocked out literally, like early in the third quarter, I think. And so while he'd scored 12 points already, we can probably assume he would have gotten far more had he stayed healthy through that game. Patrick then got 52 points combined from Chase Brown, Josh Jacobs, and JSN on Sunday, plus another 23 from JMO and Zay Flowers, meaning the fat part of his lineup all did exactly what they needed to. And then he was answered by Tim beating his meat to Josh Allen, who scored 37 on Sunday. And this was shaping up just to be a back and forth heavyweight bout. It was the matchup of the fucking year. And then Monday night happened. Jalen Hurts apparently forgot how to play football and had the worst fantasy outing of his career, including throwing both a pick and losing a fumble on the same fucking play. And then Patrick's slim playoff hopes slipped away as the clock ticked towards zero. There was plenty of drama elsewhere in the league as well. Kevin had a non-zero chance technically to get into the playoffs if like four things all happened, the most difficult of which, frankly, was beating his first place older brother, which he did by 5.5 points, but still counts. Unfortunately, Kevin didn't get the help he needed elsewhere, but frankly, after how this team started the season, this result has to feel like a success. Kevin started out 2-6, as you may recall, and looked like an absolute lock for the Sago. Kevin took a shot on Travion Henderson at the draft, only to see Ramondre hang on to the starting role for literally months. DJ Moore did nothing. Tyron Tracy got hurt. We learned quickly that Caleb Johnson is literally not ready for the NFL. Keon Coleman sucks. Kyle Pitts sucks. CJ Stroud doesn't suck, but struggled. And then Justin Jefferson went from having a bad quarterback to no quarterback, and all seemed completely hopeless. However, over the last 6 weeks, Kevin has gone 5-1, is averaging 116.5 points per game, beat both Sam and Chris in back-to-back weeks to give himself a shot at the playoffs, and saved himself from the Sacco with wins over Dan and Grant a couple weeks prior. Quinshawn Judkins has been great. Bo Nix has been a solid quarterback, and Travion Henderson has been really good for like 5 weeks straight. And most importantly, George Kittle's fucking back, dude. He's been awesome in like almost every game he's played this year. It's a shame this team isn't in the playoffs because right now I think it's one of the more fun teams in the league. My matchup against Grant was boring as fuck. I'm not going to talk too long about it. I will mention, however, that the Seahawks caught 2 tipped passes for interceptions, which weirdly seems to be a trend all weekend. It felt like there were like 7 or 8 tipped balls for picks. Anyway, both of our teams shit the bed. Grant's just shit it a little harder. ETN and Big Dick Michael Wilson scored all 4 of my team's touchdowns, so in spite of Mahomes and Breece Hall and Oronde Gadsden combining for like 10 fucking points, I was able to pull off the win. Win's a strong word. The not loss is probably better. Grant hung on to Bijan Robinson at the trade deadline in hopes that he'd help Grant and avoid the Sacco, and then Bijan only scored 7.5 points in a matchup that Grant lost by 10. I mean, Robinson's been an absolute stud all year, as has Rashee Rice, who has a strong chance of being Grant's keeper next year in the 6th round. These two and the Seahawks defense are like basically the only reason that Grant scored any points at all this year, as his draft board was an absolute fucking disaster. Plus, he was missing picks. Like, after Bijan Robinson, Mike Evans, Calvin Ridley, Aaron Jones, and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt were Grant's next 4 picks. Frankly, it's a miracle that Grant won any games at all. He made 2 really smart trades, among others, for Rashee Rice and Chris Olave, but in the end, it wasn't enough, and now he has to face off against Scott as they both try to avoid their second Sacco. So, as I mentioned, I am part of the reason that Grant is in the Sacco because I beat him, but Dan is the other reason, probably the more important one. A bizarre season for the perennial playoff contender in which he just kind of decided to, like, not draft running backs. It also didn't help that for half the season, Ladd McConkey was a complete afterthought in a high-flying Chargers offense. Boy, has that changed. Both of those things have changed, frankly. Dan eventually would get to use R.J. Harvey after J.K. Dobbins' inevitable annual injury, and then felt comfortable enough to trade away Trey McBride, CeeDee Lamb, and Chris Olave, among others, to stock up on picks for next year. However, he almost girl-bossed too close to the sun and found himself staring a 17-inch black dildo in the face in Week 14. And then, 36 combined points from his running backs, 38 combined from Watson and Fannin, and that was enough to earn him a win and save himself from the Sacco and Spartan kick Grant's happy ass into it. I mean, yes, it also helped that Scott delivered yet another clunker of a week, but still, Dan is not one of the 2 worst teams right now, so this just feels right, you know? Speaking of feeling right, Scott hasn't felt right since basically week 2. But man, how magical those first 2 weeks were for Scott. Jane Daniels, Alvin Kamara, Chuba Hubbard, and Malik Neighbors. Remember those guys? They were averaging 54 combined points over those 2 weeks. And it was only a matter of time before A.J. Brown and Scary Terry were going to start producing too. Scott was 2-0. His team was beefy as hell as the result of having multiple early round picks. And life was good. And then Jane Daniels went down. And then McLaurin. And then Neighbors and Hubbard the very next week. And Hubbard would never regain his starting job. A.J. Brown had 3 touchdowns and a single 100-yard game through the first 11 weeks of the season. Kamara, to this very moment, still has not scored a touchdown since week 1. Scott played the wrong flex 2 weeks in a row, which directly resulted in back-to-back losses. I mean, even in hindsight, with those 2 wins, Scott would still be in the Sacco, but holy shit, that would have made the season feel significantly less shitty, I would have to imagine. And so here we are. The postseason is upon us, which means the 4 best teams in the league will duke it out to crown our 14th championship. Wait, I am touching my fictional earpiece and being told that I have somehow made the playoffs. Well, that can't be right. I'm 5th in scoring and traded away my 2 best players. Oh, wait a second. I see that for the final 3 weeks of the regular season, nobody scored more than 87 points against me. Maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about the 3 actual playoff teams. Chris is the obvious number 1 seed, although his dominance hasn't necessarily been on full display lately like it was for most of the season. He's averaging fewer than 105 points a game over the last month, suffering close losses to both Scott and Kevin over that span. Nevertheless, Chris has been comfortably in first place like the entire year, enjoying a nice 7-game win streak over that span to help secure the top spot. The season began with 2 seemingly fairly risky picks at the draft. He took CMC after a completely lost season with the 107, and then scooped up Jonathan Taylor at 204 after his very mediocre season, though he did save his stats in the fantasy playoffs. I know that. So does Kevin particularly well. Both were picks with, like, I think a decent amount of risk, but frankly, they simply couldn't have gone better. Those 2 are the RB1 and RB3 and combined for 40 points every single week. And I think I speak for many of us here that I think we all feel maybe a little silly for passing on at least one of those guys. I, for one, do. George Pickens has enjoyed a few missed games from CeeDee Lamb, of course, but man, has he been good for fantasy even with Lamb around. Also, as we know, Chris has made many successful spot starts at wide receiver, including Alec Pierce, Tez Johnson, Luther Burden, Quentin Johnston, and Romeo Dobbs. His wide receivers have been like a rotating carousel of okay, I guess, kinds of players, and they just keep fucking hitting. However, like I mentioned before, the last few weeks have seen Chris's scoring really come back to earth, so we'll see if he can get his mojo back in the coming weeks. Facing Tim in the first round isn't like the toughest matchup ever, but it isn't a guaranteed win for Chris at all. Next, Sam is the 2 seed, but frankly, if we'd seen this roster in like the preseason, we might have just gone ahead and engraved the Dira on draft weekend. This roster is like so fucking stacked, it belongs in the 1989 hip hop classic Bust a Move. That's a crazy reference, I know. Sam would be the first to tell you, and frankly has done so multiple times, that he regrets taking Barkley at the 101 and should have gone Bijan Robinson instead. Yes, this would have netted him an additional like 4.3 points a game, but likely wouldn't have changed the outcome of his season, at least to this point. He's in the playoffs as one of the highest scoring teams ever, ninth highest in league history, actually, I went back and checked, and has the best wide receivers I think we've ever seen on a single team. Brock Bowers is scoring 10 points a game as well. Stafford is an MVP frontrunner. Now, Sam is 1-4 over the last 5 weeks, but one of those was scoring 104 and the other was scoring 137, so I think we can let those slide at least a little bit, at least the second one. As for the first round, I'm certain that Sam considers the 2 seed like way more valuable than the 1 because I genuinely think he's going to beat me by like 30 or 40 points. This week is basically a bye for him, and even if he doesn't get Drake London back for the championship, this team's going to be really hard to beat. This could be the year that Sam gets his second championship, and if he does, it'll be well deserved. Tim rounds out the playoff crew with the 4 seed. And while Chris is known for his crazy good running backs and Sam is known for his unstoppable wide receivers, Tim is known for his injuries. Oh, and also Josh Allen. Tim missed don't no, Kelso, we're not doing that shit. Give me that. He has the fucking squeaker toy. I don't even know who gave me that. Whatever. Get what the fuck. Look how cute this dog is. Hang on. Hello, Kelso. Wait, hello. No. Oh my god, he's putting his hand on my fucking leg. No. Kelso, you're a good dog, but stay down there. Jesus Christ. So anyway, Tim's known for injuries and Josh Allen. Tim missed multiple weeks from his keeper, his 3rd, 4th, 6th, 9th, and 12th round picks. Debo missed a week as well, and Brandon Ayuk didn't play a fucking snap all year. In spite of all of this, plus an absolute whiff on Ashton Genty at the 105, Tim fought tooth and fucking nail, including a huge trade involving Bucky Irving in a 4th next year to score 109 points a game and claw his way into the playoffs. Literally came down to the last game of week 14. This is Tim's 5th playoff appearance, by the way, in his 14 years in the league, his first since 2020. What's strange is that even with all these significant injuries I mentioned before, Tim had the 2nd fewest transactions in the league this year behind Scott. This is indicative, it seems, of the strong team culture that has allowed give charity, receive blowjobs to explode into the playoffs. Now let's talk about the upcoming matchups. We'll start off Chris -9 against Tim. And now while Tim has scraped his way through the season, he now faces Chris's team that, while not the best team we've ever seen in the league, it's still scary as hell. Several things need to go terribly wrong for Chris not to score at least 120, and I'm not certain that Tim can keep pace, especially with Lamb and Marvin Harrison questionable. I'd be surprised if both of them play, so I think I'm taking Chris in this one. Sam is favored by 20 against me. Sam is winning. Let's not get cute in this one. Jason is favored by 13 against Patrick. I think this could be a close game. Both teams are fucking pissed because they didn't make the playoffs when they're clearly better than at least one team, which will remain nameless. Jason won this same matchup by 8 points back in week 9, and I'd imagine this one will probably have a very similar result. Jason should win. It's probably going to be close. Kevin is favored by 5 against Dan. These two have played twice already and have split their matchups this season. And Dan's team isn't like complete shit or anything, but I think I like Kevin's team a little bit more right now. As long as Acham can go, I think Kevin covers. Scott is favored by 7 against Grant. So my gym buddy who plays these picks probably picked Scott in this one because Scott has more like big name players like AJ, DK, McLaurin, Nick Chubb. I mean, what a value there. But I think Grant will likely pull this one out, at least in the first week of the Sacco. All he needs to do is summon the power of the pillow punch, and he'll probably be fine. Before I close this out, we need to have an official decision on draft location and also house. I've noticed that Scott and Jason in particular have been kind of silent thus far, so I'd really like to hear from everyone. Obviously, we don't want to do something I'm sorry, obviously we want to do something that is fun and accessible monetarily and travel wise to everyone. So I don't want to have like a vote or anything until everyone has taken part in the discussion. What has happened in the past is that we'll have like a bunch of discussions about like location and houses and stuff. We narrow it down to the final few, we get ready for a vote, and then someone's like, oh, hey, by the way, I can't do like anything that we've talked about. Can we do something else? So, like, let's avoid all that nonsense and have everyone participate in the discussion and the planning before it actually comes to a vote. Capiche? Thank you. Anyway, that'll do it for this week's recap. Good luck to everyone except Sam, and go fuck yourselves.